Good morning, welcome. I can't say welcome to sunny Swansea today with the rain coming down. It's nice to see a nice big crowd of officers here. I think we're outnumbered 10, it's about 3 to 1, I think, if you was doing it that way. Because there's so many of you here, we'll do the introductions. Go this way. I'm Councillor Terry Hennigan, I represent Penderry, and I'm chairing the Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny panel.
Michelle Roberts, the Scrutiny. Michelle Roberts, Scrutiny Officer.
Yeah, Councillor Cyril Anderson, Cabinet Member for Community Services.
Chris Howell, Head of Waste Parks and Cleansing.
Sarah Jordan, Landlord and Community Housing Services Manager within Housing.
I'm Judith Williams. I'm an Operations Manager within Landlords and Community Housing Services.
Dave Thomas. I'm the Manager of the Antisocial Behaviour Support Team for Housing.
Carol Morgan, Interim Head of Housing and Public Health.
Paula Livingstone, Divisional Environmental Health Officer for Pollution Control and Private Sector Housing.
Adrian Johnson, Operational Lead for Pollution Control and Private Sector Housing.
Councillor Andrew Lewis, Cabinet Member with the responsibility for housing.
And Mark Wade, Interim Director of Place.
Yes, Alan Jeffrey, Councillor Uplands.
Online we have Rebecca Fogarty, Councillor Rebecca Fogarty, and we have Councillor Alison Pugh, Councillor Sam Bennett, Jane Whitmore and Gareth Pritchard.
Apologies.
Yes. Apologies from Mike Day, Matthew Jones, Mary Jones and Sarah Keaton.
Disclosure of personal and prejudicial interests is a mention of the Mid and West Wales Fire Authority. I am a member of that, so I'll probably put it on the form just to be on the safe side. Any other personal or prejudicial interests? No?
Oh, Sam Bennett.
Samuel Bennett, and also Samuel Bennett. Okay.
He's got his hand up.
Yeah,
I'm also a member of the Fire Authority.
I'll send you the form by email to complete.
Provision of any whip votes, a declaration of party whips. Yeah. I got 2 lots of minutes. 27th of February, page 1 and page 2. I'm looking for a proposal and second of 2 correct records. Yeah. And I can't do it, so we'll have the other one. Any matters arising from those minutes? And March the 1st, again, page 1 and page 2. And I'm looking for a proposal. Thank you very much. Public questions?
We've had no public questions that relate to this agenda.
Okay, item 6 is council housing, public protection and fly tipping. It's like as if this could be in 3 parts. So I will hand over to housing, council housing, and then we'll have to take it that way because it's all interlinked, I believe. So Cyril tells me. So who'd like to kick-start it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that members will appreciate a comprehensive report has been submitted on this item. Just to say very briefly, as you've referred to, this is clearly very cross-cutting, not just across departments within the council, but also our external partners as well. And I'm sure we hear more about that from our officers today. But we turned out in force, Chair, as you can see, but that just goes to show how cross-cutting this actually is. So I won't say any more than that, but hopefully the committee will note the excellent work that's going on across departments.
Okay, good morning, I'm going to take it, Terry. Good morning, everyone. I'm Judith Williams. As I said, I'm the Operations Manager within the Housing Service for Landlord and Community Housing Services. Welcome, good morning. I assume that you all had the opportunity to read the report, which has also had, as Terry said, input from Paula's team from Public Health and also from Chris Howell and his team in respect of fly tipping, and they will go through, as you've indicated, their things a little bit later. From a housing perspective, we are focused on ASB, which occurs on our council estates and carried out by either our tenants, members of their household or visitors to their homes. In respect of a tenancy, this is an incredibly secure form of tenancy. It can only end in 3 ways: voluntarily by the tenant, either by a possession order that would come to us from a court, and we can and sometimes use the abandonment process, which is quite new to us and something that we haven't used yet. As you can see, the report is quite detailed, therefore I'm just going to go through the headlines for you. In the housing service, we are responsible for the day-to-day tenancy management of 13,700 tenancies. This includes dealing with ASB. We take reports of ASB primarily through the area housing office service and out of hours through the neighbourhood support unit. Our approach is centred very much around the person. This includes those reporting and affected by ASB, and also when dealing those who are the perpetrators who carry out the antisocial behaviour. Within our service, our teams work very closely together, in particular the area housing officers supported by the antisocial behaviour support team. Alongside, we have the neighbourhood support unit that operates on a 24/7 basis. They respond to out of hours issues and undertake targeted patrols. And of course, we also have the tenancy support unit, which works to support the most vulnerable people in our homes. We also achieve this through Housing First and the rapid rehousing support that we have in place, primarily through the homelessness route, and I'm sure we can take some further questions on that later. It is important not to lose sight that the proportion of tenants in our homes that are the most vulnerable in our society sometimes have significant challenges in respect to their behaviour, and it is often very multi-layered. It is our role to ensure that we strike a balance to support those affected by ASB and those who are carrying it out. Our ethos is very much to support people to modify their behaviour to be able to sustain their tenancies. We achieve this through the teams I've already mentioned and through working jointly with a number of partners, notably the police, Safer Swansea Partnership, community mental health teams, pollution control and social services, basically any organisation that we can work with and that can support us and to support our tenants, we will do that. We of course take antisocial behaviour seriously, appreciate the impact it has on individuals. We triage and investigate all the ASB complaints we receive, and we ensure that the complainants are given the information, as much information as we can. Bear in mind, we are sometimes constrained by data protection and GDPR. Sometimes we can't give out personal information to a complainant, but we give as much information as we can. We face many challenges, I'm sure you can see from the report. The key areas for us are expectations. It is very important that when we're managing ASB that we ensure that the complainants are aware of what we can actually achieve. We don't make false promises and we tell the truth. We're very much focused on the provision of evidence because we can't get anywhere within our court process unless we have that evidence to support what is being said. Engagement is also a key challenge for us. I think we've detailed a lot in question 3 in terms of the sort of engagement issues that we experience. Again, but again, primarily we try to access support and partners to support our ASB processes. In terms of what tools we use to deal with ASB, in respect of those causing the ASB, we will speak to them, we will issue warning letters about their behaviour, we will work with them through support workers as well to help them modify their behaviour, offer mediation if appropriate. We will consider injunctions, again, if appropriate, look to serve a notice of seeking possession. This can often be a useful tool in trying to help get behaviour modification. And ultimately, when the behaviour is so bad and it can't be resolved, we will look towards possession. But that is only in the most extreme cases and when we have enough evidence to support us to get a possession order through the court. In terms of engagement, it's very important that we engage with tenants in all sorts of ways, and not just tenants, but also the communities that that they live in. We do this in a number of ways. We recognise its importance. For example, we have a tenancy consultative panel. They like to talk about antisocial behaviour. Dave attends that, as well as Hugh Potter, who manages the neighbourhood support unit, and that's a very engaged group. On a more local level, we participate in engagement events, sometimes that we've organised ourselves, other times through our partners, such as the Safer Swansea Partnership and the police. And we also respond to specific issues. We use a combination of methods for this, such as door knocking, questionnaires, and just smaller community events. We also consult on environment issues, so we do all sorts of work around that. We also work closely with the ward members in our communities. Obviously, ward members have their ears to the ground and they're a great source of information for us. For example, towards the back end of last year, we did a lot of really good work in the Portennant area, working with the ward members and with the police in that locality. In respect of information, our web pages are currently being updated. Partly because they needed to be refreshed anyway, but mostly to reflect the renting homes legislation. But also, I think, tenants know how to contact us in terms of the area housing office, and that's where we tend to get most of our, that's where they tend to come to for the most information. Similarly, they know how to access the NSU. We publish this information frequently. This is set out in, when we sign new tenants as well. We go through processes there, so that all helps to inform. I'm sure you'll all be interested in the data that we have supplied. Just giving 2022 as an example for you, you can see that we created 633 cases on our ASB database. From these figures, we've deliberately excluded the number of closed cases. That's because this is quite a complex area for us because of the carry forward. But just to give you a broader indication of where we are today, we currently have a live 206 antisocial behaviour cases. That's what the antisocial behaviour team and area housing officers are working on at the moment. That represents 1.5% of our stock. So I think you can see that, within the context of our tenancies, it is quite a small proportion. I think just to clarify, within the report, the first chart there, the bottom figures are percentage figures. I didn't put the percentages in for you there. I'm sure you'll have more questions about the figures, but you can see that the majority of ASB is caused by noise. You will see there was an big spike in 2021, and you wouldn't be surprised to hear that that was a direct result of lockdown and COVID, and that this was reflected throughout the country, and indeed is reflected in Paula's figures as well. Of course, we work within regulatory frameworks, delivering services while taking into account a number of legal obligations. In respect of tenancy management, we rely on the Renting Homes Act 2016, which was implemented in December, still very fresh to us, as yet untested in the court. But the principles around renting homes do stem from what was already in place in terms of housing law. There are changes to it, but I think that's a topic in itself, really. We also work within the Crime and Policing 2014 Act. We use that primarily for injunction purposes, and we use that in the most disruptive of circumstances when trying to deal with antisocial behaviour within, within some areas where you've got an example of that would perhaps be in a high-rise block when you've got visitors and somebody is causing a problem. We've injuncted people to stay away from that block, so we do use that as a tool. In terms of possession action, the bar is very high in respect of us taking any action against a tenant to gain possession. We have to provide evidence, and a judge has to be satisfied that the burden of proof is proven before we can succeed there. We also have to take into account our statutory obligations in respect of homelessness. Every person here in Wales has a right to a home. Therefore, if we evict, they will come back to us through a different route. Again, this is reinforced in our ethos in working with people who are the cause of ASB to engage with them and to provide support through many avenues to help them achieve behaviour modification, to sustain their tenancy and to help stabilise our communities. Joint working is absolutely the key to the work that we do in our communities. As partners, we have clear roles and responsibilities, whether that is within the housing service, the police, Safer Swansea Partnership, social services, both in respect to safeguarding and in relation to the community mental and in relation to CMET, which is contextual missing exploited trafficked, and also mental health teams. These, along with many other organisations, work with us together within our communities. Together, we try to keep people safe from harm to sustain tenancies. This happens against a backdrop of the multiple challenges highlighted in question 3 already. In respect of how this can be improved, we already do what we can. This is not to say that we are not looking for more opportunities and innovative ways to engage with our partners in our communities. As stated in the report, the housing service will look to support people to maintain their tenancies, to help provide stability and security for families and communities. Our aim is to help reduce antisocial behaviour, to help support community cohesion across estates. The key objectives we have listed in 2.10.2 underpin the work we do and show the commitment we have to this. In terms of addressing the causes of ASB, we will continue to engage, work and support through partners, to use a wide spectrum of tools at our disposal. We will always look for opportunities to engage with partners within our communities. We will deal with ASB in a proportionate, appropriate and measured way. We will be clear to those reporting ASB what we can and we can't achieve. With significant ASB, it will usually be for the complainant. I think, what I'm trying to say there is, with ASB, it would be normal for a complainant to demand that a tenant is evicted. That is frequently the first thing that comes to us. We want that person evicted. We have to work with complainants for them to understand that for us to achieve that is very difficult and is very, very much a last resort for us. We will deal robustly with those individuals that carry out ASB by using the tools we have, but we will do this in a person-centred approach, and we will make sure that we do everything we can to support both complainants and those people carrying out ASB.
Thank you very much. I'll open up for some questions now, please. Oh, yeah.
Councillor Rebecca Fogarty.
Rebecca Fogarty.
Thanks, Chair. Having listened to the presentation, I think probably just to be safe, I should also declare a personal interest due to my employment with Shelter Cymru. But I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive report and presentation. My first question was, I wonder whether you experience any particular challenges or distinct challenges when working in estates that have mixed tenure, so a mixture of council tenants with perhaps owner-occupiers as an example, or private rented. And my second question was, it's really encouraging to see on the face of it, it looks like the figures for the number of reports are slowly declining again after the peak of COVID. I noticed that the numbers of mediation cases are really quite low, and I just wondered whether there are any particular reasons why perhaps people don't, it's not their preference to go down that route. I know from my personal experience in my ward, it can be quite difficult to get both sides of the dispute to the table, as it were, in mediation. So perhaps actually if I could flip my question, what does work to bring people to the table on mediation? Because as you said, it can be successful. So I was just wondering a little bit more about that, please. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor. I can answer the mediation question for you. We've recently changed mediators, and there is a very low take-up because what we find is that 2 parties that we refer for mediation are usually one-to-one neighbour disputes. And they interpret mediation as sitting in the same room as somebody and therefore we've got to convince them then that it's done as a shuttle mediation initially, and then only when they are ready will the mediation be face-to-face. That has been accepted widely with most of the ones that we speak to, but a lot of them, as Judith alluded to, initially all they want is eviction and they don't want to talk to the neighbour, but we do try and work hard with them to get them into mediation.
Do you want to come back, Rebecca?
No, I think that's helpful. I think you're absolutely. I'm going to wait for the echo to stop. Is that better?
Sorry?
It's all right though. I was hearing myself twice.
Yeah, we're not getting the echo here. We're not getting it here, thankfully.
Okay, it happens when there's a mic on in the room. Jane and Sam are nodding. They're hearing me twice. So apologies for that. Yeah, I think you're right that people think that they've got to get in a room with someone that they've perhaps been having a massive argument with over the garden wall. So yeah, sort of being very, very clear about what mediation actually is when it's proposed to people, I think probably is the right way forward. So yeah, that's a helpful response. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's more comment really that actually the teams did rely quite heavily on mediation, particularly during the pandemic. The reason being that we weren't able to be flexible in the sense of perhaps moving or relocating people. So we had to find a way to create peace and harmony with neighbours. So mediation was key during the pandemic. Obviously, we're out of the pandemic now, but I think when you see the figures in the table, you will see that because people were home more, the ASB increased during that time, and now we're seeing it drop off and decrease, thankfully. But I think the table is very reflective of what was happening during the pandemic as well.
Just one quick question from me. Our mediation service, is it internally? Is it our own, or do we buy in?
No, it's imported. We buy it in from an outside agency. What we've found in the past is that our tenants prefer that, so it's totally independent and it's not linked to any of our departments.
I think there was another point to the question, I think, that Rebecca said was a mixture of tenancies.
Can I just also say with mediation, obviously we're talking about formal mediation within this context. Our officers mediate every day. That is part of what they do. That is very much their role. It's informal. They're not necessarily have formal training for mediation, but that is the approach. That is what they're trying to come to, is sort of agreement between two parties. I think you've asked about mixed tenure. In respect of mixed tenure, I think, yeah, that does bring challenges. If somebody owns their own home, they automatically think that that brings them rights, and that, you know, you can't do anything about me, therefore you've got to deal with the person next door, and you've got to evict that person, and you know, you've got to go to them. Of course, it doesn't work so much the other way when you've got a tenant living in an owner occupied, or maybe a rented from a private landlord. You know, we have got very little power in terms of what we can do with them. I guess that's when the partnership work kind of trips in a little bit for us there. But yeah, it does bring challenges. I think trying to explain to people that we can't always get the outcome that you're looking for. We will try to find a resolution so that you can live peacefully and quietly next door to each other. But I think that certainly, you know, in areas particularly, I guess West Cross would be like this, where you've got a high propensity of people that have bought their own homes, it can be challenging. And particularly when, you know, at the moment, we've got severe difficulties with homelessness. You know, when they see people moving into areas and they think, we don't want that type of person living in our area. Unfortunately, this is what council housing is for. It is social housing. You know, we have to house the most vulnerable, and you know, and that's what we will continue to do.
We can't hear you, Chair.
Jane Whitmore.
Thanks, Chair.
Hands up.
Sorry, I think if I'm echoing for colleagues online. I just wanted to say to officers, thank you for such a comprehensive report. It is really good. I'm particularly interested in Appendix A in terms of what ASB is and what ASB isn't. And just wondering if you could share with us any sort of successes you have in terms of public perception and that understanding, because that is something I think that we probably all come across. But I see it on Appendix A. I thought, oh, that's really good. And I just wonder if you do any sort of campaigning or understanding or working with tenants to help them understand what it is and what it isn't that you could share.
Hi, Jane. I'll try and respond to that one for you. Yeah, it is very difficult. People's perception of ASB is different, however it affects them. We have quite a few examples. We've had to deal with one case where a lady thought that running a bath at 11 o'clock in the evening was causing antisocial behaviour, and that went on for a long time, trust me. But we've had to try and convince them that it's not antisocial behaviour, and we wouldn't be looking into that. We've had quite a long, protracted case where children playing outside was classed as antisocial behaviour. If you look at the term of antisocial behaviour as causing nuisance and annoyance, then if she perceives it as nuisance and annoyance, then she's quite rightly complaining there's antisocial behaviour. It's down to our officers then to explain these are children playing. And it was probably easier for us to explain that these children were between the ages of 5 and 7, rather than teenagers or youths. So yes, we do go out and we do explain, and we try and clarify that with them independently and individually. Does that answer your question?
Oh, Dave, thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Could I just add something into that? I think more so perhaps in recent years, we've very much been honest with people about you're being unreasonable. You know, it is not unreasonable for a child to have the right to play. Obviously, we do other stuff within communities to create play areas and to make areas safe for children. But in all the contexts of the sort of the lower level antisocial behaviour, I guess, we do have to be very, measured in what we say in terms of, look, this is what it is. Please don't complain about the smell coming from your Jackson all day, but because that's all they're doing is cooking. We can't. That is not antisocial behaviour. So we do a lot of work around that now, and we've become a lot more honest with people in what we can achieve, because sometimes it is just nuisance that is day-to-day living.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back really on Councillor Fogarty's question, and particularly relating to mixed estates. So obviously, as Judith's explained in her introduction to the report, there's an awful lot in the report that's from the landlord services and the council's estate perspective. But there's also information in here about the activities that we're taking with the private sector as well, and both across private sector and social housing, where we get complaints that we wouldn't title them as being ASB, but where they are neighbour disputes or neighbour issues. I've mentioned two particular things relating to waste on private land. Obviously, you've had a report in the previous meeting, and Chris Howell is here as well today to talk a little bit more, perhaps, Chris, about fly tipping shortly. But we also get the types of complaints that Judith's been mentioning, and that I think you're maybe thinking about in private stock or owner-occupied stock, mixed estates, private rental, and residential social landlords, registered social landlord properties as well. And we deal with those as well in the same type of way. But we've also got a regulatory framework that, dependent upon the circumstances, would allow us to take enforcement action irrespective of tenure. If we find, for example, that we've got instances of statutory nuisance, so be that relating to noise or to waste or to other issues between neighbouring properties, we could actually take enforcement action. but that again is normally after we've tried informal means of talking to people and giving advice. So I would hope, Chair, that the panel is assured that we try, irrespective of whether somebody is a council tenant or not, to resolve issues.
Regarding running a bath after a certain time, I think Carol might remember when we done the Danish complex and the Danish model, where you couldn't have a shower or a bath or use the sewing machine after 8 o'clock, because most of the social housing it was in flats. And I actually turned around and said I thought it was a democracy turned dictatorship, because that's the way it was, and this was run by tenants for tenants. And, running about. Well, there we are. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Judith, for a comprehensive report. But I notice focus is mainly on sort of social housing. But I mean, there are parts of the city that do have sort of private landlords who rent, and this area here, the Uplands and Bryn Hill, has a high density of students. I mean, we do get evidence of antisocial behaviour. Basically it's noise or hijinks by students in the main. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't think it was a police matter, but we do get those kinds of evidences. But in the situation with mediation, from what I understand, there's very little that takes place between the students and local residents. Other than what we do as councillors, because I do a little bit of that, there's no harm sort of knocking on the door and having a word with students, but it is persistent, because it's the same issues we get sort of week in, week out. I was just wondering what the situation is in respect to your department, mediating between students and local residents. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jeffries is in the report, and I think you're aware we contribute towards Swansea University employing a community liaison officer. So that's part of the partnership working that the council has with both of the universities and South Wales Police, that we jointly fund a community liaison officer. There's actually 1.5 people in post, but the council contributes towards the full-time employee. So she is very active in the local communities, particularly around Uplands and in Castle as well, also across into St Thomas and in the waterfront areas. She will first of all go out and speak to both the complainants and to the students themselves, and both of the universities will follow their disciplinary procedures. So I've been in situations where students who are causing persistent problems of the type of things that you mentioned, maybe taxis coming home at the early hours of the morning, shouting, singing down the street, that are persistent issues, things that we don't have a regulatory framework for, but the universities do call those individuals in, do speak to them, and do follow the disciplinary procedures that they have. And that's a really good example of our partnership working.
Yes, I have met with both. I think you're talking about Stephanie Stanton and Ellie Masterton, I think, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, I think that they seem to be sort of very efficient in what they do in visiting students. And I mean, the promise is that I go with them and meet some of these students, but weather and other things have taken precedence at the moment. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, could I just say, this seems to have come up about private tenants and private landlords. People have said in my past work, we used to use the Environmental Protection Act 1992, whereas with the tenants thought they could do whatever they like. We used to challenge that. We used to go for the landlord. And it's the landlord's responsibility then to look after their tenants. If they don't, we could serve notice on the landlord. That's what we used to do 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, perhaps, Chair, just to clarify that. I mean, landlords are not responsible for everything that their tenants do, neither private landlords nor the local authority. So it will depend on the individual circumstances as to whether any action is possible with the landlord. Perhaps when you're talking, I'm not sure, Chair, but perhaps when you were talking about the Environmental Protection Act, maybe if you were talking about waste being left in properties, maybe. Those are, that's perhaps the only circumstances that I can think of where we could actually take any enforcement action with a landlord. And then again, it's very, very dependent upon the actual specific circumstances in each individual case. Somebody who's, if we're talking about a garden perhaps that's full of 50 or 60 black bags of rubbish or being left there, it's actually the occupier's responsibility. It's not the landlord's responsibility to deal with that if the occupier has placed the waste there. So yes, there are times we speak with private landlords every day, without fail. I can assure you of that, but it depends on the individual circumstances. We obviously look to landlords to help us, and more often than not we get very good responses from them, but there will be individual cases where things are much more difficult than that.
Yeah, I think there's many absent landlords, as they call them. And regarding the university, have they still got the liaison officers that liaise with the City County of Swansea?
Yes, Chair, that's the community liaison officer that Councillor Jeffries was just alluding to there. Yeah.
Move on. If you want to take it to the next level.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think perhaps I don't know if there are any other additional questions, but as I say, the report that Judith's outlined covers information of what we can do with regards to pollution control and private sector housing and our regulatory function as well. So I don't know if there are any other questions, but the same type of things. We've got some courses of action that we have in common with what Judith's already mentioned, and the regulatory framework that we've got. And again, there's some stats in the report that I think has been picked up. We saw an increase during the pandemic. Same sort of thing with complaints. Barking dogs, as an example, is something that we're seeing more of now, perhaps, as people who've maybe got puppies and dogs during the pandemic, and now those people have gone back to work. So the dogs are in a situation where they've been used to having somebody at home with them all the time. Those people returning to work, maybe some of the neighbours haven't, and so we're seeing an increase because of an anxiety with the dog, for example, something very specific. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Yeah.
I've just got one of the questions that came out of a number of the meetings was around noise abatement and the process that you deal with related to noise abatement. Maybe you could outline that if possible.
Yeah, of course. So within the team, we've got a number of officers who deal with pollution control, which includes noise. I think I've referenced in the report, I think we've referenced there that's not just in domestic settings, that could be commercial, entertainment settings, wide range of issues there. Process for us can be difficult. It's a case of trying to gather relevant evidence. Because we get a report of a complaint of noise, that doesn't mean to say that we can take enforcement action based on something that a council officer hasn't actually witnessed themselves. It's very important that we get evidence from the people who are being affected by the noise. We might ask them to keep a noise diary. We provide information to the person being complained about. And we also operate a system whereby we have a limited out of hours response, so that if somebody makes a complaint to us, let's use the barking dog example because we've already mentioned that one, but if somebody does make a complaint to us, they can be put onto what we call the out of hours register, the out of hours list. That means that the individual then is given a specific telephone number to be able to contact the council out of hours as and when they've got a problem. We've got, as I say, we've got on-duty officers on a rota basis out of hours. That call will be put through to them, and they will contact the complainant then, first of all, to see whether the noise is still going on. And if they are, they will try to visit and try to witness the noise. So irrespective of whether it's in the daytime in your normal office hours or whether it's on the weekend out of hours in the evening, if we have the evidence and if we can determine that an issue is a statutory nuisance, that's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit complicated to try to explain it as well, really, but the officers have all got the relevant training to be able to do that. We don't automatically use noise meters. I think, as I've mentioned in the report, a statutory nuisance for noise doesn't mean that a particular noise hits a certain reading on a noise level meter. It's an assessment that's carried out by an individual. We can serve an abatement notice, an enforcement notice on an individual, requiring them to stop or reduce the impact that they're having. And we can, as a last resort, really, if somebody doesn't comply, the council can take somebody to court through the magistrates' court to prosecute for failure to comply with that notice. Or we can also, if we're talking about huge, great big, I'm showing my age, hi-fi systems, music systems, we can seize noise equipment. I see all these people laughing because I said hi-fi. We can seize equipment, and we have done that. It's not very common, but we do actually have legal powers to be able to do that. I think the important thing in the regulatory function for us is that we're looking to try to stop the nuisance, perhaps rather than penalise the offender or the perpetrator. The two things more often than not go hand in hand. But again, as Judith mentioned, as David's mentioned, if it's a case of speaking to somebody, perhaps they don't realise that the walls in their property are not as thick as they think they are, or that next door neighbours are working shift work, or that they've got a young baby, or maybe they did realise they'd got a young baby because they can hear that, but that's a young baby, you know. So again, a lot of informal work, but also there's a regulatory process behind it if we need to do that.
Yeah, just briefly on that, is there any discretion when you're dealing with noise pollution or noise nuisance where perhaps the neighbours have phoned in, perhaps it's a community centre, you might know where I'm getting at you. I believe a noise abatement notice was served on a majorette band practising in Penlan. Are you aware of it? Oh, okay. I'll speak to you after about it. It wouldn't be fair for me to... that we on the ground are also seeing how things are developing. And it's nice to see, you know, tenants and residents coming forward to give the information. But when you're talking about, say, a majorette band and things like that, you know, where young people from the community are working and trying to take them off the street into a community centre, but that's something else. So I'll leave it at that for that. Thank you.
No, not a question as such, Chair, but just a comment. If I could say, it's a bit of a story, really. I mean, I've got one of my constituents who had 4 or 5 young students next to him and played music sort of 24/7, and he sort of almost drove him mad. So in retaliation, he put, I don't know if you know Planet and the Mars, he just recorded that, went away for the weekend, put speakers up against the wall next door, and came back about 3 or 4 days later. So they had Mars for sort of 72 hours. But it did solve the problem. I mean, the girls did stop playing music. So I don't know whether that could be put in the document in some way.
I wouldn't advocate that as being the way forward. But I could, you know, I also know a certain pub not very far from here that when it was chucking out time used to play very loud classical music as a key for everybody to go home.
Yeah, and very similar thing happened up in Mount Pleasant not so long ago.
Yeah, good morning, members, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity of presenting the fly tipping thing on the agenda this morning. The purpose of this is to update the Scrutiny Committee on actions on fly tipping. The document is a summary of the current procedures in place to deal with fly tipping. Secondly, I'd like to thank Fran Williams, Waste Enforcement Team Leader, Jeremy Davis, Group Leader of Parks and Cleansing, for putting this report together. And I'd like to hand over now to Chris Owells, who is Head of Service Waste Management and Parks Cleansing.
Yeah, just before I let you in, could you just touch on where each ward has so many workers to come out each month, 2 per councillor per ward?
I think you're talking of CWAT's team. I don't think that's to do with fly tipping, but if Chris, do you, what information are you looking for, Chair?
We can't hear you, Chair. Sorry.
2 days a month in the community where we perhaps even organise litter picks and these sort of things with these particular workers. I did have a quick look through the report. I didn't see it. I just wanted to raise it. I think it's good, very good, but I thought perhaps there's other people may not know about it, so I thought I'd raise it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do know, I have spoken with Jeremy. A lot of the members have really got into the way of reporting work for the CWATs, but Jeremy and myself are willing to sit down with members just to take them through the procedure of reporting it and any other business regarding the CWATs. So if you'd like to contact me out of this meeting, I can certainly ask Jeremy to set up a meeting. Cheers.
It's an extra service, isn't it, really? And I think it's good.
Thank you, Chair. The Appendix B to the report submitted to the committee today, it contains a fly tipping report, which was previously submitted to the Scrutiny Programme Board back in November. It outlines how the authority tackles fly tipping in its entirety. But in terms of how the fly tipping process supports dealing with antisocial behaviour, maybe if I can take members to paragraph 1.5 of the report in Appendix B and run through some of those key issues and then take questions after that. Okay. The main objective of the team is the promotion of responsible practices for disposing of waste and preventative measures to discourage fly tipping. Some of the actions in terms of preventative measures, we can tackle hotspots by taking physical measures such as blocking off lay-bys with boulders, removing vegetation to make areas more visible, etc. We take enforcement action where that is considered appropriate. We undertake education and engagement activities at numerous locations. The Council also works with partners such as the police, the fire service, social housing associations, Keep Wales Tidy on preventative measures, clearance and enforcement. In more detail, we work with the police to stop vehicles carrying waste in order to ascertain that those businesses have the necessary duty of cares and are registered waste carriers. Obviously, the clearance of fly tipping in a timely manner is very important to stop a reoccurrence, and our current target is to remove that within 5 working days. We also work with private landowners to facilitate both the removal of waste from their land and there is potential for subsequent enforcement action on their behalf. We work with landlords of properties to ensure duties of care arrangements are in place for any tradespeople who are working on their properties. We also work with householders to ensure that they have legal disposal of waste and that they use organisations who have the necessary waste carriers licence. And we also use surveillance in some areas, albeit it is fraught with some difficulties in terms of legislative requirements and practicalities of using surveillance. So there's some of the ways, Chair, that the flight tipping team contributes to dealing with antisocial behaviour, and I'm more than happy to take any more sort of detailed or specific questions the committee may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, as an antisocial behaviour team and from a housing department, we work closely with Fran's team and the enforcement team. A few years ago, I think it was the first housing prosecution taken to court for fly tipping, and that was done by the enforcement team. And recently, we gathered the evidence from CCTV of a tenant actually fly tipping, and that tenant was actually prosecuted and paid. Well, she paid the fixed penalty notice, but that was also done through the team. So working as a partnership across the board. Thank you.
Could I ask you that? Did it affect their tenancy?
It did. We're still working on it. He's a very elusive individual.
Any other questions? Yes, Rebecca Fogarty, Councillor Rebecca. Oops, sorry, Councillor Rebecca Fogarty.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at risk here, I think, of merging into another area of scrutiny, but it was just to ask about the means by which members of the public can report fly tipping. The website is, in my view, quite clear and easy to navigate, but I have had reports of residents using the phone number, reporting it through the contact centre and not getting a response. And then when I've picked it up and sort of, you know, contacted the relevant people, it has been dealt with very, very quickly. And I must pay credit to the officers who, once a report is picked up, do seem to respond very, very quickly and effectively. So I was just wondering, you know, do you have any sense of which there may be reports sort of dropping through the gaps, I suppose, between contact centre and your team?
I'm not aware of anyone's dropping through the gaps. I guess it wouldn't be if they've dropped through a gap. We get reports of fly tipping through many different sources, even sometimes on social media, and it is unfortunate in the world we live in now that people paste something on Facebook and expect that the council is continuously monitoring Facebook on other channels and will act. So undoubtedly, there's a risk of reports falling through the gap through a level of expectation which the council can't meet. We have fairly well documented and formalised methods, as you say, the ones you mentioned. We've got the website and the call centres. So I'm not sure there's much more we can do in terms of promoting and encouraging people to report fly tipping.
Can I just add, Chair, possibly these fallbacks were throughout. I had problems as well, but I take it back as far as COVID, where it was just the start of the pandemic. We were in such, although we were doing work from home, I think what the biggest problem was, because we were all on lockdown, we were having phone numbers on the website, but sadly they weren't transferred to officers working from home. But I think that have all been remedied and sorted out now. As Chris says, I think it's very far and few between. We do get a lapse with phone numbers.
Okay, Rebecca, do you want to come back? Okay. I got Sam Bennett next, and then Mark Tribe. So Sam Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the table on 3.2. The FPN issued, it seems remarkably low for a city of our size. Is there a problem with, I suppose in the first instance, is there a problem with the resources to do a level of enforcement? I mean, looking at dog fouling, we've got one FPN and one paid FPN over that period. That does seem very low, given in high dog walking areas how much dog fouling there is in the area. And additionally, I wanted to pick up on the comment about social media, people with trying to report on social media. Is it not the case that Cardiff Council will accept reports of fly tipping and litter, etc., via their social media accounts? And if so, is there something that we can learn from them in order to pick this up better?
Picking up the social media account first, I suppose there's a difference between people using a council's social media account and people going generally on Facebook and saying there's fly tipping here, it should be dealt with. So that's where I was sort of indicating that people have a very high level of expectation. But I'm more than happy to check out Cardiff's processes to see if there's something that we can look to enhance what we provide. In terms of numbers of FPNs, first and foremost, our goal is for people not to commit any offences. So for there not to be dog fouling, for there not to be fly tipping. That is somewhere where we'll never get. So there has to be an element of enforcement which then follows on. But our aim is not to maximise the number of fixed penalty notices we issue. In terms of resources, we can always do with more resource. But I think the team is adequately resourced for the priorities that the authority is looking to implement. Dog fouling itself is it's probably one of the most difficult things to enforce against, because if you have, we often will patrol beaches, for example, and we have a lot of engagement on the dog bans on beaches, because when somebody has a dog on a beach, then that evidence is fairly clear. With dog fouling, you have to actually, as bizarre as it sounds, you have to witness the actual dog fouling, then link that to its owner, and then that owner has the option to then pick up that dog waste there and then. So dog fouling is, our approach really is far more about promotion of good behaviour and visible patrols in difficult areas. And visible patrol, it greatly reduces dog fouling when they're there, but it doesn't result in high numbers of dog fouling fixed penalty notices. So I am comfortable with the numbers we have and the approach we take.
Could I fetch you Mark Tribe next, please?
Good morning, all. Yeah, we have a perennial problem with fly tipping in Belinda. I think everybody's aware. I do work closely with the PCSOs, and the obvious question is, can we install cameras, especially up in Belinda on the lay-bys there, which are very popular. Apparently, the police aren't too keen on on the CCTV, but there is a way around it using wildlife cameras, which perform exactly the same function. We had an industrial scale fly tip last weekend, up to 60 green and black bags, and they have been collected. Fantastic work from the council again. We have a problem with fly tipping on the DPD site in between Llangyfelc and Belinda. Again, the CW02 OT team have been there and they did a fantastic job, but it's returning to its usual state as we speak. So what are the chances of getting around it, or perhaps installing bins or installing wildlife cameras? Is that an option perhaps? Thank you.
The installation of cameras is always an option. Part of the difficulties are, firstly, a lot of cameras. When we're talking about large scale fly tipping, it's a commercial enterprise in itself, and the people who undertake this behaviour can be very determined and very ruthless. Cameras do get vandalised if they are overt cameras, which is our preference. If we wish to use covert cameras, we have to go to a magistrate's court to gain permission each time. If the camera is effective, what it will do is it will stop fly tipping at that location. Then that fly tipping will happen somewhere else if people are absolutely determined to carry on with that behaviour. And the evidence that we require from CCTV is also quite high. It is more useful in areas of sort of large-scale fly tipping because you need the vehicle details, and a lot of time if people simply cover their number plates, again it nullifies the use of cameras. So they are an option. They are fraught with difficulty, but I'm more than happy if you send me some details on an email. I can put you in touch with Fran and the enforcement team, and then we can reassess on a location by location basis whether we think some additional preventative measures would be useful, potentially including the use of cameras in that mix.
That'd be great. Thank you much.
Thanks.
What about the option of large boulders and laybys? Do you think that's an option?
Yes, again, it's an option that we've done at many locations. There is a risk of it diverting fly tipping, but it is about trying to channel it, and the only other option is to do nothing. So at some locations we've used boulders very successfully. So again, on some of the locations you're mentioning, that may be an option that we can close off areas if they're not used for other purposes. Then we can close areas off to just cut down the space. Unfortunately, as bad as it sounds, we do have people then who just don't care and will tip in the middle of the road and just drive off and block the road. But that doesn't mean that we should give them convenient laybys to be able to fly tip on either. So yeah, absolutely, boulders is a well-used option.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it should be noted, the councillor have said on 2 occasions there about the fantastic job they've done. Maybe that should be noted for further down the line when we put in our recommendations and things to get together. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one point, Chair, if I could. Thank you, Chair, and Chris. I think we met before, haven't we, at some point up at the Baling Centre. A couple of points. Councillor Mark Chibers and you have addressed that situation. I was going to ask about the surveillance and the installation of cameras, but you've seen. I was just looking at bullet points on page 20 at 1.5. There's bullet points 2 and 3, although they're not numbered, but they're there. One of them is about the persistent disregard of curbside collection and persistently disregard of the arrangements. So that's pretty common around here, because week in, week out, I photograph and send in to the to EVH. And whilst we're on that comment there, I support what the chair is saying. I got nothing but praise for the cleansing team and the CWAT team. I think they've done a lot of good work, particularly around the back lanes of our streets. But the question I was asking, what is the enforcement there in terms of this sort of persistent failure to fill the green bags appropriately and the plastics and so forth? They constantly mix and therefore left behind by the collection team.
Yeah, there's a number of ways of taking enforcement action, and it depends on the example that we're dealing with at the time. If people put out a black bag, maybe on a corner of a street, so not outside the house, so that they're looking to lose it, that would be, if it's one black bag, it would be classed as littering. If it's more than one black bag, it would be classed as fly tipping, and we could go direct to fixed penalty notices if we have evidence of an individual has perpetrated that offence. And that evidence can be a witness, or it can be evidence from the waste itself. When we move then to people not presenting their waste in the correct fashion, so as you said, contaminating bags, recycling bags, or indeed putting recyclable materials in a black bag. If it's if it's an example of somebody put things out on the wrong day, then we need to, that's about duty of care to present their waste in the correct manner. So we issue a formal notice first, which we have to do. That notice clearly explains the requirements of our collection regime, gives them an opportunity to appeal against the notice, and then after a 21-day period, if there's a recurrence of that behaviour, then fixed penalty notices can be issued. And that's why the persistence comes in, because we want to, first of all, we have to issue notice. Then we want to help people and educate people and support people in recycling. Sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes they genuinely don't understand what they need to do and don't have the capability to understand. It's about all support, and fixed penalty notices would be an absolute last resort. When we come to our Keep Recyclables Out campaign, which is specifically around recyclables in black bags, we have a 4-stage process. The first stage is if we find people with recyclables, a lot of recyclables in their black bag, we drop them a letter saying that we've noticed this, asking them if do you need containers, do you need food caddies, do you understand the process, and often that will involve a knock on the door and a discussion. After we've done that step, if there's further recurrence of lots of recyclables in black bag at the same property, we would then issue the same style of notice. So again, formally giving people notice of what is expected of them in terms of presenting their waste. Now, because that has a 21-day appeal process, 2 weeks later, if we identify still people putting recyclables in their black bags, we issue them with a further warning letter because they're still within that appeals period. And again, that is offering support. Do you need help? Do you need advice? Do you need containers to help you to recycle fully? And then only the 4th stage would a fixed penalty notice be issued if 2 weeks later again there was still blatant disregard and black bags full of recyclables. So that's kind of a range of ways that we deal with it. It depends on the individual circumstances, and we strive to educate and support first and facilitate effective recycling and correct management of e-waste. Fixed penalty notices, it really is a last resort for us.
Thank you.
I can't see any more hands up.
Chair, we can't hear you.
Yeah, who was it? Oh, I see. Yeah. So we've got item 7, which is the inquiry project plan and work programme and date the next meeting. If you want to stay for that part of it, by all means. If not, you're more than welcome to leave the auditorium, if that's the right word. And before you go, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for attending this morning and being very positive, as the questions that also came from councillors and other people. Thank you very much.
Chair, can I ask if you want a word with me offline? I'm in the Cabinet office most of the morning.
Once I finish here, I can pop in.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, if we just do that now.
Who's that?
If we just, would you want me to outline the work programme?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm ready.
It's only very briefly, the work programme, the next meeting will be on the 13th of April and will be with housing associations. We're also in the process of arranging meetings in May for you to do some consultation activities, and you've probably seen some emails on that, but that will develop as the weeks go on now, and I'll keep you informed. Thank you.